What I find really nice is when they're quietly painting with me. Sorry, this sounds awful, doesn't it?
No, I'm laughing because I can completely empathise.
Welcome to the Art Alchemy podcast, where we talk about art and cultivating a creative mind.
And today for episode 5, we're going to be talking about creative communities. And I think most people's experiences of early type creative communities will be within the education system, which was what mine was. I went to art college in Warsaw and did a foundation art degree and A-levels there as well, which probably was my first art community. And then when I went to university, of course, it was even more specialised because I went to a university that was full of art students. That was my sort of first engagement in an art community. But I guess looking back, when you're that age, you probably don't realise how significant it is being around people like that and being able to discuss creative ideas and all sorts of interesting things. It's probably when you only really step outside into the real world, you realise how sort of valuable that is, to be around people that are like you and that you can share ideas and inspiration with.
Yeah, agreed. I think for me, I didn't have that university type experience, not in the same way as you. I did go to university, but it was about the creative writing, and equally that did open my mind quite a lot to, I suppose, to be able to look in at creativity in its own right.
Yeah.
But it's a great environment to experiment in, I'm guessing, because you went to art school. So
Yeah.
I didn't do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, when you're at art school, you've got things like group critiques where you'll do reflective sessions where you look at each other's work and you give feedback and those sorts of things. But as well, I think as creative people, we can be quite different from normal run-of-the-mill people without saying too much.
You've got to expand on that a little, Ruth.
Well, I just think that the way that creative people sort of think and even just go about their day-to-day lives can be quite different from the normal run-of-the-mill. So I definitely felt like when I was at art school, I felt more included and part of a group of people, more so than I ever did when I was at senior school. So I think that's a big part of it as well, is like finding your people, finding people that you can click with and have all sorts of interesting kind of conversations with as well. I think that helps.
And I think when you talk about that, the interesting conversations, even my granddaughter said the other day, you talk too much about art. I was like, yeah,
Is it?
I could talk about art, but I could talk about materials as well.
Yeah.
And materials are really boring to other people. Yeah. But they're not to other artists, are they?
No. And like, I think the thing, like you say, the thing is with art, it's a never-ending topic, isn't it? And I think even if somebody does art that's quite different from you, I think you can still appreciate it for what it is as well. Yeah.
I'm thinking about the communities that I was in. They taught us how to critique, which is quite interesting. They taught us how to be, I would say, how to be quite constructive. Constructive is the right word. Yeah. So they taught you how to look for the positives in your work as well as the negatives.
Yeah.
So that's like education, which is quite interesting. But a lot of the community side of it is the peers and the people that you meet, isn't it? Rather than what you're taught. It's definitely those sort of network, the people you connect to. And interestingly, that's what creativity is about a lot of the time. Well, it is for me. Yeah. Although later in the episode, I think we're going to talk about the lone wolf and how people perceive artists as well. Yeah. But
I think especially because the route to being an artist and making a career out of it, or even building a hobby out of it, or it might be a business, there's no straight path, is there, to being an artist. Everyone has got to go, it sounds cliche, but everyone's got to go on their own journey, haven't they?
They have.
To really carve out what they want to do with their art, where they want to go, because there's so many different options out there. So I think having people around you as well that you can lean on to discuss these sorts of things is really crucial, because it can feel quite lonely, because it can be quite overwhelming. So I think you do need people around you. I think traditionally sometimes artists can be quite introverted, because we spend a lot of time alone, thinking, practicing art, doing the creativity. So it can be quite challenging to step out your comfort zone sometimes and kind of push yourself to meet new people and to find new people as well.
Especially if that means sharing your art, because
yes,
I think sometimes it's hard to share with other people what you do, because it's very personal and part of you, and so that can be quite tricky. But in my experience, I've found that it's quite powerful sharing with other people as well. There are issues with that sometimes when you share with people who really don't understand, but you have to learn not to take that personally, really.
You do.
I think some of this is personality, because I'm quite an outgoing personality. I do like being in the studio and painting on my own. I put some music on. I do like it, but I don't like it exclusively, and I paint really, really well when there's other people about painting with me.
Yeah.
What I find really nice is when they're quietly painting with me. Sorry, this sounds awful, doesn't it?
No, I'm laughing because I can completely empathise.
Yes. I started a craft group years ago, and I remember being in the craft group and we were taking different things, and I think I took some cross stitch or something, and everybody was talking, and I got to the break and I was due to make the tea that day, and I'd done 3 cross stitches, because you have to count. People were talking all the time. I was like, I'm going to go make the tea.
Brilliant. I think it would be helpful to talk of different kinds of creative communities, because I think a lot of people during lockdown, instead of having that physical connection with people, had to go online, and at that point as well, I think courses and memberships and art memberships became extremely popular for people to access as well. So I think it would be good to talk about the benefits of the online options that are also available to people, because people might not necessarily live in a location where there are kind of local art groups or things that they can get involved with.
So when I went into lockdown, I'd been running classes in village halls. I only had a couple of classes, but it was just like, that's how I operated, really. And when we went into lockdown, I was like, the same as everybody else, what do you do?
Yeah.
And I thought the only way I'm going to keep in touch with people is to learn this online thing.
Yeah.
So I had somebody who contacted me, Ben at Web Optic. He'd done a little bit of work with me on the website, and what he said to me was, we're going to start up this membership thing that people can join, and we can put videos, basically. So lots of people did it. So yoga teachers went online with their yoga classes, and he let everybody do this for nothing. It was really, really good. He was starting something up himself, but he just realised that it was a good thing to do.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, okay, I'll have a go at this. So we used to do a Zoom call, and obviously everybody did Zoom, didn't they? Everybody.
Yeah,
like,
that's all everyone was using to start with, yeah.
Absolutely. So we'd do a Zoom call every week, same time as classes would run, and a lot of people didn't do it, but there were people that did. And those people that did, there's a couple of them that said, you saw us through. We just really loved that, because you still had a community, and it's not always about the art. Sometimes it's about, because I get people who are older and join in when they've retired or whatever, and they're just being in touch with friends as well. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But what people also said they liked was the fact that they could replay those videos, which is something that you can't do. So I was doing a demo and then they were painting themselves, but they would watch the demo, we would talk about it, and they would go back through it. And they said it was great because they could play it and stop, and then they could do a bit, and then they could play it and stop. And that's fabulous, isn't it? So you do get something online. This is my point.
Yeah.
You can pick up on things that you perhaps wouldn't have done because you'll go back through it, or you'll, paint alongside or whatever. So it's interesting. I do think there's a different side to the online. And I think it's also interesting because we've met in a community, haven't we?
Yes, exactly. That was where we met. It was, well, I suppose it was more like an art business course, wasn't it, than a purely art course. It was more focused around getting your website up to date, how you communicate with customers, that sort of thing. And it's funny because it's a fairly large group, wasn't it? So it was like there was a forum as well as the course material. You can drop into this online forum and have chats,
questions in the forum,
and ask questions, and also look back to see if you can search the forum as well to see if there's answers that you wanted. Then you could search to see whether it was already there. So that whole thing of, I suppose, being able to create content, have content online that's searchable, like a little bit of a library, isn't it? The benefit to having things online and make things accessible for people.
But the thing that I got from that as well was seeing other people do art.
Yeah.
So I think before that, obviously I'd had people come and I was sort of teaching art, but it was interesting to see all the different types of art. And the people that you connected to, who either were interested in similar things or at a similar level. Certain people, you didn't connect to everybody. Might have been where they were, like we started the same week, didn't we? So we were in the same place throughout the course. We really went at a similar pace. And I think that it started me exploring even more art, more the contemporary artists rather than what I'd liked from artists in the past. And people who were new to art, like the same sort of level as me, what they were doing, that was really interesting as well. And you learn a lot from what people are doing.
Yeah, it's definitely beneficial to have. There was quite a few people in the group, weren't there, at various different levels. So you've got people that were on the same sort of level as yourself, and then there's people with more experience that could help you, point you in the right direction for certain things. The thing is, as well, is everyone's got different experiences, haven't they? So it's great to hear different people's opinions on things. The art business side of things, that really helped me.
I've made a connection to you.
I know, and it's just carried on from there, hasn't it?
It has. And I made a connection to somebody called Claire, and that was like a geographical connection, because she was only in the next town from me. That makes sense. So we go out once a month now. So
I think the thing is that you think these online things sometimes can seem a bit superficial, but actually it does lead to actual proper human friendships, can't it?
Definitely. We've been talking about like-minded people within that community that Ruth and I were in, but often people don't necessarily deliberately look for like-minded people, but what happens with the community is you come together and you find like-minded people. So the next thing we thought we'd talk about was the different types of community groups and how those different types of communities mean that people come together at certain either times in their lives or because they have a particular need. Then they find like-minded people that are in similar either situations or have similar interests to themselves. Let's start off by talking about hobby artists, because that's something that I have been very involved with myself. And then we'll move on to some of the things that Ruth's been involved with, like artist collectives or all the groups of artists.
I think it's quite often people join, or people's entry point into art, if you haven't necessarily had that formal education, is going to be local art groups, hobby artists, because it feels, I think they do a great job in terms of getting people involved in creativity, is that kind of that first stepping stone a lot of the time.
Or not even a first stepping stone. Some people just want to have a hobby, which is why we're terming it a hobby artist.
Yeah.
Something that they really enjoy and can get involved with. But if they're left to do it on their own, it sort of tails off and they don't do it. They get caught up in all those things we talked about in carving out time. I think by having that space of either, I mean, we've talked about online briefly, but when it's a physical community, it's a time that you go and you do. And then you're with people that are enjoying doing the same thing. And I think that that's a really good space to be in. It's a really enjoyable space.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think it definitely feels more supportive, doesn't it, and less scary than doing it on your own. And maybe when you're not sure what materials to start with, where to start, it's great having other people around you. And people to bounce off as well. So they might see something in your work that you've not seen. That they might think, oh, if you tried doing this, you'd be great working with this material.
And conversely, you might see something they've done.
Yeah.
It's not all coming from the person who is leading the group. It's also from each other. And the person who's leading the group, I mean, I lead groups, but I learn from my students all the time because they come up with something new or they paint in a certain way and I think, oh, that's interesting. A community where you learn or you're supporting each other, which is quite different from just going to a class, I feel, in a way. So although we call them classes sometimes, I think community is a better term for it, really. Does that make sense? When it's this creative side.
Yeah.
That's why we call this episode Creative Communities, isn't it, really? It's like, yes, there's classes, there's workshops, but they're just labels for places where people come together and are doing a similar thing. When I've got a class, I don't know about you, you've got something in your mind that you're trying to get over teaching.
Like an end goal, yeah.
There is some sort of end goal.
Yeah.
However, in a community type course, a community class, it's often a lot of the things that are almost more valuable are the things where you're sat round, you might be talking about your everyday stuff. I had one piece of advice from another local art teacher and I said to her, I actually was asking her permission to do it really because and she said to me, and I've got just one piece of advice, just watch that people are not losing confidence in what they're doing. As long as they stay painting, they will progress.
Yeah.
Yes, you can give them techniques. Yes, you can do all these things. But if you keep painting, and that's what these groups do. You're sitting there, you're painting, and learning from each other. Without it, it's almost automatic. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, I host a monthly art workshop in our local park, and a big part of it is centred around mental health and mental well-being, of being creative and getting people out in nature, observing nature. So it's not a particularly technical class, and there's often not really a formal end goal where you'll end up with a picture of, I don't know, say a palm tree. But it's more getting them experimenting with different materials and observing and looking what's around them. But I've also found the more important part of being a workshop leader is actually facilitating that space for them. It's giving them a space, isn't it, for them to turn up, and then giving them permission to be able to go off and observe the things that they find interesting and to explore the things that they want to explore. So I guess it's about giving them enough sort of guardrails that they're not completely overwhelmed by too many options of what we're going to be drawing that day, but giving them the kind of, like you say, that space. And then I'll find by the end of the class that everyone's always sort of really chattering away and having a good laugh, and it's lovely just to be in that atmosphere. It's really nice.
Yeah, and going back to the like-minded people, I always find that art groups are really lovely for some reason.
Everyone that I've had has been super nice and just really enjoyable to be around. I think it does help that you're doing creative things that's enjoyable. People, they sort of drop down their ego a bit probably doing it. So you see more of the real person, I think.
Yeah, and I think over time, because sometimes, I've been doing this since 2016 now.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the people that are with me have been here for quite a long time, which means that they really get to know each other.
Yeah.
And I was talking about stopping classes last year, and people are getting quite upset, really, that was happening. I know, because they're all friends, and that's the place they meet. So, and you do get different people. You do get people who want to progress their art, but you also get people who are just wanting to go to a place where they're doing something they really enjoy and they're meeting other people.
And it can be people at all different stages of their life. It might be anything from a young mum up to somebody who's now retired that's found they've got more time to themselves and wants to meet other people. So it is I think it's a fantastic way to meet new people as well, that doesn't necessarily need to involve, I think particularly in British culture, like drinking or, it's a healthy thing to go out and do, isn't it, and to meet other people.
Interestingly, I get roughly, I think it's about 20% men to 80% women, and I don't know why that is, but you do get men that are interested as well.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting thing, because I don't know whether that's proportional in professional artists. I think that there's probably more men percentage-wise than, I don't know whether there's still more women, but I still think there's more proportionally.
I think there's obviously a difference as well between men that are interested in just pursuing art as a hobby versus professional male artists. I definitely feel like things have changed during COVID. The representation of women in galleries, there was quite a big spotlight on that for a long time. Trying to make it more fair, because the stats on that were quite upsetting, really. The amount of female artists that you find in the really big galleries like Museum of Modern Art and things like that. So there's definitely been a push, I think, since COVID to try and level out that representation, because I don't necessarily think it's not that there's less females practicing professional art. I think it's maybe easier for men traditionally to get on the front stage and the forefront of the art galleries.
Absolutely, if you look at history.
Yeah, I mean,
for certain.
I mean, this is another episode that we'll have to do, Debs. But there was. I started reading a great book that's all around female artists. I think it's called The History of Art Without Men, and it's absolutely fascinating. Like what women have always been doing, it's just not had that kind of spotlight shined on it. I don't think that it's that women aren't interested or ambitious. I just think that, unfortunately, sometimes, in the past, that we've had that kind of not had
the role
the same
of looking after the home and not working.
Exactly.
To be fair.
Yeah.
But interestingly, when it comes to hobby artists, you definitely get more women.
I've seen that. Yeah.
And that doesn't mean men aren't interested either. I wonder if they don't come because they expect there to be more women as well. I don't know.
I know that at university there were barely any men artists, which might surprise you. Very small fraction. I think there was about maybe 10% men.
Yeah.
I'm speaking about everything from fine art painting, printmaking, photography,
sculpting.
But most of the guys were in the sculpture department.
See?
Messing around with metal and wood.
Yeah.
I thought that was fascinating because when I was at college, it was probably about a 50-50 split in our classes. Yeah, that's another kind of dynamic,
Something
isn't
that we hadn't
it?
thought about doing until now.
Yeah.
And that's another podcast.
Yeah.
Definitely. I just wanted to put a spotlight on retirement because a lot of people come to me when they've had their children and the children have left home and they may have got to the point in their careers where they're either slowed down or that they've stopped and they've retired, and they're looking for activities that they'd like to do. And they come back to art. Sometimes they'll say, I always wanted to do it. I was really good at school, but I either didn't think it was a good career because well, the starving artist is definitely
all
another
of
podcast.
that, yeah.
But also it's about that now I've got the space to do what I want to do. Yeah.
It's their time.
It's their time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting. But a lot of them also are like, but I haven't touched a paintbrush in years. And so it's very, very scary. But they do it. They do it. Although I have had a few people who've rang up to say they're going to come and then they just haven't come. And you
It's
never
a
know
shame.
why. You
Yeah.
never know why they haven't. And it may be that circumstances have changed. You really just don't know.
Yeah.
But because you haven't even met them, it's interesting that does happen. And then sometimes they think, oh, we should have done this like years ago as well.
I know.
Yeah.
I think it's quite interesting because sometimes it can be that replacement to that community that you used to have at work as well. So you might not necessarily particularly enjoy your day job, but I think there's definitely that social connection piece to work that helps build confidence and all those sorts of things and meeting new people. So I think when people do retire, if they've not necessarily got a hobby that they can turn to, I do think it's really important to have something in your life that's outside of the day-to-day stuff where you can kind of connect with people and have that social aspect as well.
Although also I've had people who have got children and they just want something for themselves at a different time in their lives as well. It's not just people who are retired, but it's just that there is often people who retire, they're looking for something that is of interest. And then they are looking for more of a community class as opposed to going to a class at college or things. So when I say that I have a goal in mind for the term, I might be concentrating on colours or something, but you are producing paintings, that's what you're doing. Different people will do it in different ways. Some people will do a step-by-step thing, and I used to do that years ago, but I don't tend to do that now.
Is there any advice that you'd give people? Maybe they're at the beginning of thinking, I'd really like to do something creative. Maybe they're not quite sure where to start or what kind of community that they want to join. Are there any particular questions that you think would be helpful for people to ask themselves before they dive in on what kind of thing that they choose to drop into?
It depends. If it is like a hobby type thing, then people are often looking for something that is accessible to them fairly close as well. So
Yes, that's true. That's definitely something to...
looking around at what's local, but then considering we have in our village, and it's a tiny village, there's me who does... I'm more experimental, I do acrylic, I do other mixed media, etc. But also very much about you finding out who you are. It's like, so it's quite different to somebody else. So Sue is also, who also teaches in the village, she will encourage you to be your own person, but she does teach watercolour, and so some of that has to be step by step from it's like technique, a lot of it. And then we've got Mark Lippett in the next village. He's a very detailed artist. He'll be very good if you want to do drawing. So it does depend sometimes what you want to do. Now, if you contact one of those people and then you explain who you are and have a chat with them, they'll tell you if you're in the wrong place and they'll suggest somebody else. I would suggest,
Yes, definitely.
actually, you're looking for somebody like. I would do that. I mean, I'm assuming the others would do that because it makes sense to do that. And I have no issues with somebody coming to my class and then going, no, this isn't for me. I'll go on. try it, see if you like it. Sometimes it isn't for you. Don't feel obliged to stay. I'm always happy for people to move on because they're moving on to finding who they are. It is interesting to find where you're happy, really, and what you want to do.
So I guess probably don't overthink it then to the point where, no, give it a go, get stuck in, and like you say, you know, your tutor will definitely understand if it's just not for you and you want to try something different.
And also,
take it personal.
No, they won't take it personal at all because it's just what happens. But also, tutors will help you with materials, so don't get hung up on materials.
Don't let that stop you, because you could be doing research for years if you were to work out exactly what you need and all of that kind of thing. I think you've really got to experience these things, haven't you, to know as to whether it's for you or not. And the only way of doing that is just giving it a go and getting stuck in, really. And
the thing is, if I give a kit list, I can give a kit list, but if I do, then you might like something else as well. It's it's a little bit, you do find your own way.
Yeah, you do.
I usually say, bring along what you've got. If you haven't, I'll give you some stuff and then we'll work it out from there. I do give kit lists sometimes, but I tend to sort of see what people bring and then say what they could improve or what they could, that's what I do. But others will give a kit list, just say this is what you need exactly, and just bring it.
And then there's other memberships and courses and things that you can enroll on that will actually be, the materials will be part of the course as well. But I think that's probably something that you'd want to try after you've kind of given a few things a go, so that you know that you're going to get best use out of the materials. If you're doing something a bit more in-depth like a course, you want to know that you're going to get, I suppose, value out of that, don't you, before you commit to something. So for starters, I'd probably say definitely kind of start small within a local art class or a local art club or something like that to get going. And
there's different types of local art clubs. So you've got ones where you've got somebody who's teaching, and then you've got local art clubs where people are coming together who are just providing a space. And sometimes they'll provide, with Stafford Art Group is fabulous because twice a week they meet and you just bring your own painting. So you are making the decisions on what you're painting. But what they provide is they'll provide somebody to demonstrate every now and again. They'll provide a life model every now and again, and they'll provide exhibition space. So they organise those things. So your membership pays for those things. And then you're meeting with like-minded people. Whereas if you come to a class, you're going to be guided through things, whether it's your own painting. So it could be some people, you would come and they will talk you through your own painting and give you supervision, etc. Supervisions are on. And then there are other classes where they'll say, this is what the painting is, we'll step by step now. Workshops are a bit more like that because at the end of the day, you'll have a piece of work. So you go out, it's like a day out, a workshop. I provide all the materials for the workshops because it's just a day out. Yes, you pay more money because the materials are provided. We go to lunch, we don't provide lunch, but I'm next door to a pub. So that sort of thing. She's smiling.
It's convenient.
I've got a gate in the wall. So they park on the pub car park. They're really good to us next door. Anyway, that's so it works because, and that is more of a day out, just a and
I suppose at the other end of the spectrum you've then got things like artist retreats where you can choose to go off for a week and have a week
that's like immersion,
solid painting somewhere. You know, there's quite a lot out there though. I've noticed they seem to be getting more and more popular. Everything from sort of, I suppose, short UK breaks up to like some really glamorous vocations that
I've done painting holidays. So painting holidays I've done in the UK where you get your own self-catering but beautiful accommodation with swimming pools and everything. And then we'll go out and sketch, but we'll have a studio, and it's great. And the studio will be a room that we've set up, but you know, that a space to paint inside, because obviously it's not always great, the weather. But also it means that you can sort of go, right, if we go out sketching, then you can take it back. How do we make a painting from it, and that sort of thing. What I found is people have said the reason that that's great is the permission. That was, we talked about it in Carving Out Time, didn't we? So it's the permission to paint for that period of time.
Yeah, and that long
block. It's nice. It's just nice. And, you know, they've got some freedom to have a bit of a break and go in the swimming pool if they want to. But a lot of people, we do sort of paint throughout the day, really. We did do quite a luxury one before lockdown, and I wouldn't do it now, but we used to go to France, and people we would pick up from the pub next door, and we would completely take over all of so people would pay, they'd pay more money, but they would pay, and we would book their flights, we would have a minibus waiting, we would have somebody to drive them round the other end. They would be fed everything. They couldn't spend money.
Sounds fantastic, Deb. Are you sure you don't want to start
again? Well, it wasn't just me. There was Elaine involved in France. So she used to do all the catering, and she used to provide. She had this 7-bed market farm house near to Limoges. Market farm. She was doing it up, and we'd got these, her bedroom, my bedroom, and then there was the 5 bedrooms, so we only took like 5 people away, and it was really good. It was good. And I've still got easels out there. I'm like,
have you?
Yeah. Gosh. Because we provided
was
all
it
of
when
the
everything
materials.
got shut down?
We haven't done it since. And the short breaks I like the idea of overnight breaks now. However, I'm going to move on.
So we've talked quite a lot about hobby artists, people that are just doing art for the enjoyment of it, coming along to workshops and things like that. I think the other side of that is people pursuing a professional art career, whether that's with galleries or on their own in terms of professional art groups. Normally they're known as artist collectives, but they can take lots of different shapes and forms. You can have everything from the charitable status of an art collective, where you're coming together as a group of artists to perhaps facilitate things for the community. Other art collectives can be focused more around the professional and the career side of things. So there might be somebody facilitating things like exhibitions for a group of artists, and quite often they've got like a common theme. So it might be that you're all UK watercolour artists that want to get together as a group and want to kind of represent yourselves at things like art fairs. Because there's quite a few art fairs, aren't there, Debs, that only will accept either galleries or artist collectives. So if you're interested in doing things like that, that can be quite often become a real benefit to being part of a collective to do those sorts of art fairs.
Yeah, I think, is it Cheltenham? Oh, I can't remember. There are different
ones.
There's
quite a few. I know Edinburgh's one that will only take groups as well. So, and I think the benefit to being around a group of artists that are really, I suppose, driven as well, you get to share knowledge and with each other, and it's having that identity, you know, you can have a reputation more with a group of you together to be known for, particularly if you've got a niche around something.
Yeah, and that brings that comes to another type of groups, because it's like you've got your little collectives where you've got 3 or 4 artists where have come together to do exhibitions together, and I know you're doing something where you've got a small.
I am locally,
and I've got Sue and Claire, and we've actually got a Shrewsbury gallery next year that we've got about 4 weeks that we're showing together.
Fantastic.
So that's providing an exhibition space. And what's nice is if I was doing it on my own, it's more scary.
Yeah, it's quite a lot of pressure, isn't it? Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And you can have little meetings. We go out for something to eat. So we provide some sort of accountability really as well. It's like, what's happened? How have we moved forward? Are we going to how are we going to get people to know this advertise or whatever we're going to do? You're actually planning it together. Otherwise, you're doing all that on your own, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Which is fun, to be honest.
It's not. And when you've got, say, like a group of, even if there's just like 4 or 5 of you, if you're all contributing to that social media, you're going to get more eyes on your work. The people that are interested in their work are also going to find something about your work that's interesting as well. So you're kind of multiplying that effort, aren't you?
Yes.
Into your audience and finding your people.
There's a little bit of support as well, isn't there?
Yes, definitely helps.
Yes, you feel much braver when there's...
Yes, you do. I mean, at the moment, I'm in the early stages of trying to start something off locally, and that's because I myself here, I've got people like you, Debs, that I know that we've not actually physically met in person yet. But I'm wanting to find people closer to me geographically that I can meet up with, and we can have that kind of that back and forth as well that we discussed right at the beginning of the topic about being able to discuss things within a group of artists. And we're looking for a shared studio space at the moment that we could potentially hire together and have a space where we can physically meet and see each other's work and discuss things, which I think is super important.
That would be wonderful, but I've looked locally, there's one in Stoke, it's just that little bit far, so it is finding that
it's finding the right space, isn't it? Because we do have some studios down the road, but without going into too much detail, they're not quite right for what I was looking for. We know a guy that works through lottery funding who's got connections with things like Fife Council and other charities that hopefully we'll be able to find a space somewhere, because I think like a lot of UK high streets as well, there's spaces that aren't being used, and just think we must be able to do something. So that's what I'm going to try and pull together this year. I want it to be focused around an in-person thing and also be a space to engage members of the public as well in things like artist talks and open studios and all of those sorts of things.
See, that's another thing. They don't do open studios in Staffordshire, you know.
They don't do it in Dunfermline, but they do it in
Edinburgh.
They've got one in North Fife, which is further up north from Dunfermline. And then they've got Central Fife, but for some reason Central Fife doesn't include Dunfermline, which I find very strange.
Well, here it's right,
strange.
Strange.
Something else for you to start then, Debs.
I thought about it. And I'm like,
I'm joking. Maybe not this year. Maybe next year.
So going back to, there's lots of types of professional communities.
Loads. I could have done a whole episode on that because there's lots of different financial models. So I've seen some people where you have to pay a monthly fee to be as part of an artist collective. That's probably if you're looking to do, regular exhibitions, studio space and those sorts of things.
And sometimes they're a bit bigger.
Sometimes they are, whereas I'm choosing to start off quite small because I'm still very much at the early stages of figuring everything out as well.
It's not
so
just that,
I couldn't take...
But if you have an exhibition and you're showing and there's just like 3 of you or 4 of you, whatever, then more of your work's there as well. I think that is quite nice in a way. But there are sometimes collectives that are quite big. Yeah. Or you get professional organisations as well, and they have opens and things. So that's it's almost a different... So you'll have organisations as well, professional bodies, that, like the Royal Birmingham Society of Artists, for example. And you have to be invited to join and that sort of thing. But then they put on exhibitions and stuff like that. And that's a different thing again. But again, it's still community.
Yes, it is.
Because sometimes you feel like I'm here behind my wall, hiding on my own, with the professional side, I felt a little bit like at sea, I think.
Yeah.
It's only recently that I've started, and I think it's because I've joined some online communities, actually. So I've joined the Connected Artists, and it does make you much more confident.
Yeah.
Because you're amongst other people, and you think, well, if they can do it, then so can I. And then you're in this big community of people who are often in a much further ahead of you. They're further ahead of their journey than you. And they've probably done all of the things that you're doing and made all of the mistakes that you're making.
Yeah.
But they're there and you can ask them things.
That's the thing.
If you want to. I haven't actually been very active in there.
Yeah.
Because I'm just soaking it up at the minute.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean to say I'm not watching what's going on. I'm doing that.
Can definitely shortcut, can't it? A lot. Because you'll know yourself from the experience that you've got, how much you've learned along the way. It's amazing, isn't it?
It is.
How you think back to how you used to do certain things in certain ways and think, gosh, I'd never do that now.
Yeah.
You know.
And I feel from the professional side, I'm at the beginning of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just like an amateur who was going to watercolour classes. Then I was playing with acrylic, open something, because it was just a little thing, really.
Do you think there's had to be a change in mindset for yourself in order to sort of let yourself say, right, I'm going to try this now?
I think there still has to be a change in mindset for myself. I'm hiding my art. I'm trying to get out there.
Yeah.
I am making
and
steps,
is that the reason why you joined up with your other artist friends to do the exhibitions and do it in I suppose, a supportive environment?
I was trying to do it on my own, and I was finding it was a little bit
it's hard,
daunting.
Isn't it? Yeah, very hard putting yourself out there.
Yes.
Definitely. I mean, I've got a lovely gallery down in Brighton as well, which I suppose is another type of career, which are an absolutely lovely group of artists. The curator that looks after the gallery, Caroline, it's called Liberation Art Gallery. She used to be an art therapist, so she's very much focused on the mental health side of art and the well-being side of art. She does workshops and things in there as well. But I just knew as soon as I went into that gallery, I just thought this has got something a bit different and a bit special about it. And she's obviously individually picked artists, not just based on their art, but based on their story, where they've come from, you know, the kind of the journey that they're on with their art as well. And I could tell that when I met the other artists, because sometimes there can be, I've experienced it in the past, a little bit of kind of ego, you know, with artists, but these group of artists were just so lovely and down to earth, and you know, it was quite refreshing meeting them all. And I've kept in touch with them since and gone back to the gallery since and had some lovely chats with them and seen their artwork sell as well. So it's great because it feels very supportive.
That's really nice.
I suppose that, you know, just be careful because there are other gallery spaces that are just so focused on the commercial side of it, and art might not necessarily be that interested in who you are, what you're doing. I suppose that's one of the benefits of going to university as well. You kind of get used to all of that stuff, like preparing for an exhibition, putting things on show, talking about your artwork, all of that stuff, which can be quite daunting and a bit of a challenge. But
after saying that, I have done a lot of exhibitions and things. But they've just been very local. That's, you know, so it's not. It's just, and I did it with other artists. I did it with Sue and I did it with Barbara and Lydia. There was a few of us. We were the main four, and then there was a couple of others as well. And we did it in the church. And it was, and I'm going to say, amazing, right? Because we had to be so careful about hanging things and not damaging the walls, etc., etc. And it looked fabulous because obviously the building was great.
Yeah, the architecture.
And we had to be really mindful of the building, but also quite inventive in how we were going to hang stuff. I feel like going to an art fair would be easy comparatively. It sounds weird, but yes, you might have bigger paintings perhaps. But other than that, it's
because they generally put kind of hard shells, don't they? Just walls, and then you've just got your hooks and new things that you put over the top of it, and it's quite straightforward and simple. And you only get sort of a couple of hours to get everything set up anyway, so I think they make it. And I think that leads me on to something else that I think would be interesting to talk about, which is community or types of support outside of your artist groups, and your friends and your family, and what that's like versus being with an artist group.
Yes.
Any
and that's
thoughts,
quite
Dave?
different.
Yeah, it does. It definitely depends on who you're speaking to and whether you've got, I suppose whether you've got arty friends or not, and whether they understand, appreciate anything about art. Some of my friends are very interested and, entertain me, but there's other people that just don't.
Must have had some resistance to leaving work to do this.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Because this is a big jump.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know what your friends and family have done. And we haven't talked about this beforehand.
No, it's
no,
true.
not at all.
Yeah.
Because I know what
some
people
of
are
the
like.
responses. It's quite interesting. My dad's always been really encouraging of my art career. And that's something that stood me in really good stead. Even to the point where there's been times where I've not believed in myself and wanted to jack everything in because it gets really difficult sometimes. He's always been the one that's like, no, you've got to go for this. You've really got to give it your best shot. So he was very supportive of me. In our family, the majority of people have got their own businesses. So I do think there's maybe something there, or maybe that I've seen other people run their own businesses and seen it as a viable option to me, as sort of unconsciously given me a bit of permission as well to really go for it. That's probably helped in my family dynamic and helped them understand as well why. Because some people, their worst nightmare would be running their own business. They just want their 9-to-5 job. And I get that.
Yes.
For me, it's kind of the opposite, where I want my own freedom. My partner, Andy, it's taken him quite a bit of convincing to get us to a place where he's content for me to go off and do my art and pursue that. I think we're at a good time in our lives where he's not too far off sort of retirement age out of the military, which is young, he'll only be 41. Yes. But timing-wise is always quite a difficult thing, isn't it? When is the best timing to do something and to make such a huge change? I suppose there's never a perfect time, but financially a big driver to this was just getting the mortgage paid off, which we're very fortunate that both of us have got kind of the salaries, and our mortgage was not huge either. So that was one of the things that I think held me back for a long, long time, was the money aspect of it, because I didn't want to put us under any sort of financial strain, because I think that can impact actually the quality of art and stuff that you do, that you want to do.
Yeah, because it is quite a leap, really.
Yeah.
It was different for me because I'm still probably just building up what I do, really.
Yeah.
Because mine's so different. My story is that I'm retired through ill health. I have been really poorly, and so I'm doing this. People see me sometimes as doing it as a hobby, but the reality is that there's sometimes I have a bit of a fight, because could it be easy for me to retire and just stop, and why am I doing this? And when I was in my 30s, I didn't work at all because I was so poorly, and it's like, but then there's a bit of me that just like goes, no, you want to do it. I don't make money really at the moment. That's not, but I think what I have done is improve the art. And I think that, and what it does really is just pay for the art, and then it pays for me to develop.
You're not losing any money from it. You've got something that means that you can, I suppose, continue to have fun with your art and playing with different materials and buying equipment.
But I feel now, in conjunction with what you're doing, I feel like I'm getting more serious now.
Into Deb. Oh, and
not really. I think
I think you're naturally drawn to people, aren't you? That are you've got kind of connections and similarities there, and you might not always know why you're drawn to someone until it kind of unfolds.
Until they land you in it, you mean?
Yeah, I'm trying to put it in a nice one.
No, I don't read that.
Oh dear. Yeah, I think you've got to pick the right people, though, haven't you, to have these sorts of arty conversations with, because people can be very quick to fire you down. I found that with certain people, and I think I won't be speaking to them again. It's just left me feeling sort of not great. But I think that probably says more about them than about you, if they're so quick to kind of say, what have you thought about this? Is this something that you should really be doing? Surely you can't make money off things that you really enjoy.
Because you're following your dreams, aren't you? That's how they're seeing it.
Yeah, maybe they've not given themselves permission to do what they really want to do. Maybe that's why they're having such a big reaction to it. So I've definitely experienced that in the past with certain people that just seems to have kind of got their back up. Which is interesting.
It is quite interesting. So from a family and friends point of view, I'm fortunate to have a very good arty friend in Lydia.
Yeah.
And I think that I've probably made a lot of friends that are art friends as well now. Interestingly, when I first knew Lydia, I wasn't really doing the art, but she was.
Okay.
So I was doing more poetry. It's not that I'd never done any, but I was just like hobby artist.
Yeah.
I can bounce off ideas off her. And my mum, because my mum is also done art herself, and my mum comes to everything. She comes to all of my things. Yeah. It is really lovely. So it's my sister also does art, so it sort of helps, doesn't it, that family are interested. George isn't that interested in art.
No.
George, however, he does have an interest in supporting me in doing what I want to do, bless him.
Well, that's what you need in a partnership, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he does sometimes get a little bit irritated with how much I talk about art. I think I talk a lot. I mean, that's why we're doing a podcast, and I'm very good at talking.
We can have a good natter about it.
People said we look quite natural. That's because we just talk.
Yeah.
I think sometimes from the village, you get this, like I'm just playing at it sometimes. But that's changing over time.
That's interesting.
And it is interesting. I don't know whether that's because I've now got a studio, because I didn't have a studio before. I don't know. I'm not quite sure. I think somebody said to me the other day, I'd never met her, but she was sat next to me. We did this glass fusing workshop that was in the village, very, very popular. So we all sort of glued bits of glass, and then they're going to fuse it for us. Anyway, we were doing that, and this lady next to me, after a while, she went, "Are you Debbie Chatfield? Are you the person behind the green gates?" I'm like, yes, that's...
Oh,
yeah, like, and I get a little bit of that now, which I never... Are you artist?
Yeah.
So I get that too. That's quite... And that's a different sort of thing, because it's like, no, I am just Debbie Chatfield. Actually.
Yeah. Yeah. The artist known as Debbie Chatfield. Yeah. I'm a normal person.
You get a bit of both. When initially, and I think a lot of people who are going to just normal people, if you start to decide to take it more seriously, initially people are like, oh yeah, well, it's just a hobby, isn't it, really? But then after a while, you start to get these little bits of, oh, you're the artist.
I had that quite a bit at Glasgow Art Fair, where I did feel like people might be intimidated to sort of come up and talk to you, because there is that whole persona artist, which is not always that positive, is it? But I think as soon as you start just having a chat with people and just explaining it on like a normal human level, then people are, it's nice to chat away to people, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's what It is funny. It is. I was just like, oh, that's interesting. And people sort of see you in a different light sometimes as well. But that's not really quite the friends and family thing, because friends and family often don't. They see you as doing more of just a hobby, really.
Yes.
It's not.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to takeaways now.
Well, it's probably quite a general one, though. I think the thing that I've been thinking about as we've been talking is just the variety of different ways there are to connect with different creative communities, the amount of options that are out there for people, whether that's online or in person, but also just how important I think creative communities are as well, not just for your creative career, but also just meeting like-minded people and finding that support. I think it can be a massive catalyst to your career or finding out what it is that you're interested in as a hobby. Just having this chat today, there's just been so much, and there's more that we could have covered whilst we were speaking. We've not even touched on things like social media or anything yet, have we?
And we haven't. We could do that as a separate one.
Yeah.
If you're looking for communities online, or
there's loads to choose from. Yeah. So I suppose that's been my main takeaway, is just that there's so many different opportunities to work with other people and do things that are mutually beneficial.
I think there is a lot in this episode, and that's been harder for me to have one specific takeaway. Weirdly. Yeah. I think a takeaway is that it's interesting to see how people perceive you. So this lone wolf compared to a artist that's in communities. In my experience, a lot of artists do like community. And if you start to look at the amount of community that is out there for artists that's available, if you start looking for it, it's quite amazing, really. We don't just mean hobby artists, we're talking about professional artists, all sorts of artists. In fact, we haven't really gone into it, but things like the Visual Artists Association, the Society for All Artists, and all these sort of communities online, some are for professional, some are for hobby artists. And yet, there's this lone wolf idea of an artist.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I haven't met many.
No, I haven't either. It's almost like a myth that if you're born with talent, it's just a case of getting stuff done on the canvas and you're going to be a superstar picked from obscurity. Whereas actually, you need quite a lot of support and community around you to even have any opportunities to sell work, be in exhibitions, meet other people that are doing similar things that you want to do. There's the people aspect that's integral to business to get anywhere. So I think maybe some of it comes from that.
The networking aspect.
Yeah. I think maybe some of it comes from that there's a kind of a myth that you're talented and you're just going to be put on centre stage, and it doesn't take any hard work to get good at your art, you know?
But maybe there are some lone wolf artists out there.
Yeah, if you're out there and you're a lone wolf, get in touch.
Said, you automatically think everybody's the same as you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And then I'm trying to think of people that I know that aren't wanting community.
Yeah, yeah.
Do answer us. Do put things in the comments. We're really pleased when you contact us directly as well. But it will support us if you comment as well directly in these, because that helps us to get out a little bit further.
Yeah, it's going really well. Yeah, so it's great to get some comments so early on as well when we've only just started, because this is a bit scary for us, really, isn't it, doing something?
It is.
So it's good that people are enjoying listening.
And we're really touched by some of the comments as well.
Yeah.
Because we've been reaching people, which is nice.
Connecting with people. That's fantastic. Just want really
community.
Yeah, I know.
So even the podcast.
Come back full circle.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. I don't know whether I did quite say about a takeaway, but I think we've had a chat. So I'm not quite sure whether I got a takeaway quite from that. But it was just that view of
different perspectives. Yeah. And I think it's it's interesting as to which environment you're showing in or who you're speaking to. You'll get different kind of perspectives from people. We talk quite a bit about friends and family's perspective versus the difference of when you're at an art fair. There'll be different kind of perspectives from people and different conversations.
Your local community perspectives will be different from people won't necessarily know you in the same way because you won't be a local artist.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean to say, I mean, I've just had somebody last minute join onto the painting holiday. And again, this might go after the painting holidays run, but that was really nice because they've been in touch with me from further afield than my local community.
Yeah.
But they will be seeing me completely differently. And that is interesting, how people perceive people.
Definitely.
Right.
The sun's just come out here, so it's been a lovely chatting to you as always, Debs.
It's been great. And thanks everybody for listening. We'd love to hear from you as always. And see you soon.
See you soon.
Bye for now.